I audible? One second, timer don't start yet. Am I audible? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, timer, you may start now. Yes, dear Modis, it pains me to admit it, but yes, my sister did help me with the content for this speech. The year is 2019. The month is November. Diwali is right around the corner, and according to the VIT academic calendar, vacation starts from tomorrow. You are walking back to your hostel room after that tiring class in main building. You're not wearing a mask, and neither are you standing 6 feet away from your friends. It's all peaceful. This is before the pandemic took this world by storm. Good evening, Toastmasters and guests. Let's revisit that scenario from earlier. In fact, let's divide what happened next into three simple scenes. So, as you reach your room, you realize that your proctor has not approved your leave yet. So, you call him to find out what is the reason for the delay. Now, your proctor, who's generally never in a bad mood, surprisingly shouts at you saying that your parents did not send a mail, so he can't approve your request. What would you say in this situation? How would you respond to ensure that the communication is effective? Keep that in mind. Moving on to the next scene. The time is 9:30 p.m. You're standing opposite to the VIT main gate, and around 10 auto annas surround you asking you where you want to go. After a small tug of war for your luggage, you ask one of the auto annas, Anna, railway station, how much rupees? Having spent almost 2 years in VIT, you now know that it's bargaining time. But to your surprise again, this one auto Anna lists out the reasons why the amount he asked for was only fair. He says that he has to take you all the way to the railway station, but he has to come back without a customer. So he somehow has to make up for that fuel cost. What would you say in this situation? How would you respond to him in order to ensure that the conversation is effective? Keep that in mind. Now on to the final scene. You're at the railway station, but you don't know which platform your train is arriving in. So you decide to ask the railway station employee. You ask him a couple of times from the other side of the booth, but you receive no response. Fed up and frustrated, you shout at him. And to your surprise again, the help desk employee shouts back saying there's a board with the train platform numbers written right next to you. Look at that. What would you say in this situation? How would you respond in order to have an effective conversation? Keep this in mind. We all know that communication is basically a process of exchanging information and understanding what the other person is talking about. So if you think about it, communication is a type of transaction. And it goes without saying that we all want our transactions to be smooth and successful. For this purpose, several types of communication styles have been identified. But what most people don't realize is that there's a completely separate factor that plays an equally important role in determining how effective a conversation is. Ego state. What is this ego state? Well, ego state is a technique that helps you understand the behavior of other people so that the communication can be effective. It lets you empathize. And for basic everyday communication, 3 ego states have been identified. The parent ego state, it involves an authoritative tone, and the person seems very rude or harsh. Child ego state involves a more compliant tone, and this person seems to adapt to every conversation much more easily. The adult ego state involves a very reasonable tone, and the person seems very straightforward. In order to have an effective communication or a successful transaction, a parent ego state must be matched with the child ego state, and an adult ego state must be matched with another adult ego state. All other forms of cross transaction will fail, causing a break in communication, which will ultimately lead to conflict. Now, you might be thinking, what is this handsome boy sitting here and talking about ego states for? He's supposed to talk about communication style. Well, that's because in order to have an effective communication, you must first understand what the different kinds of ego states are. In the first scene, your proctor shouted at you and he used a very harsh tone. This means that he was in a parent ego state. And for this communication to be effective, that is, for your proctor to approve your leave request, you would have to respond in a child ego state. So, in a very mild tone, you could say that you will sort it out with your parents and the mail would be sent soon. As your proctor would be expecting such a response, it would calm him down and the communication would be successful. In the second scene, the auto owner justified his reason for asking a large amount of money. This means that he was in an adult ego state. So the only way for the conversation to be successful was for you to respond to him in another adult ego state. You could say that you understand where he's coming from and you can either comply or choose not to pay or choose another auto owner. In the third scenario, both you and the railway station employee shouted at each other, which shows that both of you were in parent ego state, which resulted in conflict. So in order to resolve this conflict, either one of you would have to shift ego states and move to a child ego state. When I sat down to write this speech about different communication styles, I realized that just knowing about these styles or being able to identify what style a person is using is inadequate. This alone does not guarantee that you will be able to communicate effectively in every given situation. Now, for that to happen, you will have to understand where the other individual is coming from, their perspective, and their point of view. You have to understand why they said whatever it is that they said. At the end of each scene, I asked you guys to keep in mind what you would say and how you would respond. Well, to answer that, Toastmasters, all you have to do is ask yourself why they said what they said. Over to you, TMOD.